Welcome, everyone. Your Worship, Madam Chair, dignitaries and friends, I'd like to begin by recognizing that we are gathered today on the traditional lands of the Treaty 6 First Nations, and that these lands also hold deep meaning for the Métis people of Alberta. Thank you for joining us at the 2018 Impact Luncheon. Let me start by wishing everyone a very happy new year and welcome to the Edmonton Convention Centre. I'm so excited to be speaking here with you today. I love Edmonton, and I'm humbled to have this opportunity as CEO of Edmonton Economic Development to start what I think will be an amazing conversation. I first want to express my love and appreciation to my wife Tamaris, who is here today, for her constant support and for her vision. She was born in Edmonton but grew up in Vancouver's beautiful North Shore. Early in our marriage, I wondered about maybe moving to the coast, but Tamaris was sure that Edmonton would be a far better place to raise a family. 4 children and 4 grandchildren later, her wisdom is clear. How blessed we've been to have raised our kids in this wonderful, wonderful town. I also want to express my gratitude to the Board of Directors of Edmonton Economic Development for their confidence and support, and for the entire team at Edmonton Economic Development who help me and serve all of you every day. I truly believe that 2019 is going to be a big year for our city, and I'm excited today to share why. In 2018, we were reminded of a lesson we have learned before. We cannot expect our challenges to be solved by others, and we cannot trust our fate to decisions being made somewhere else. We as Edmontonians achieve more when we come together to envision the kind of city we want to live in and then work together to make it happen. I know this because we have faced pivotal moments in our city's story many times before. I have seen what happens when Edmonton rises to meet a challenge. I graduated from the University of Alberta with a business degree in 1984. At that time, the Edmonton economy was in tough shape. I was fortunate to get a job at Pricewaterhouse in Edmonton. Most of my classmates had to leave Edmonton to find work because there were few opportunities here. After receiving my CA designation, I moved into PW's consulting practice in the late 1980s. The economic situation had not improved much. Growth was stagnant, talent was still leaving, and the Edmonton economy was suffering from local weakness and global recession. It's telling that my first major consulting assignment, which lasted years, was working on the liquidation of the Edmonton-based Canadian Commercial Bank, the first Canadian bank to fail in 60 years. Downtown Edmonton resembled a ghost town. Retail businesses were shuttered, companies were moving their offices and headquarters to other jurisdictions, and it felt as though no matter how hard we tried, we couldn't get our act together. In response to these and other challenges in 1990, City of Edmonton engaged Pricewaterhouse to create an economic development strategy. I was the junior member of that consulting team. We worked with a large steering committee of your counterparts, conducted hundreds of interviews, and I personally did a ton of research without Google and without the internet. In fact, whenever I dropped into the reference section of the downtown public library, I was welcomed like Norm showing up at the Cheers bar. One of the key findings in our final report to City Council was that the city-funded economic development agencies were not cooperating together. We recommended merging them into a single corporation. Council agreed, and Economic Development Edmonton, now Edmonton Economic Development Corporation, was created in 1993 to promote economic development and to be a model for collaboration. Imagine my surprise and delight 20 years later to be asked to take a leadership role in this unique organization I helped in some way to found. Now, the 1980s and 90s were tough for Edmonton. To pull Edmonton through, we required collaboration from many people with a diversity of expertise. We've been very fortunate that so many committed and talented people stepped forward, taking on the mantle of city builders to drive deeper conversations about what we wanted our city to be. City builders recognize that our city is more than a network of roads and a collection of buildings. A thriving community requires people who want to build lives here. It requires a strong economy so that people can provide for themselves and their families, and it requires arts, culture, sports, recreation, education, and philanthropic investments. For Edmonton to succeed, we need to work together and bring our diverse experiences, talents, and ways of thinking to the table to be part of a bigger discussion. When I think about people who have helped build Edmonton, I think about people like Bob and Shirley Stollery, two Edmontonians who became advocates for children's health care and made big things happen. As president and CEO of PCL, Bob set out a vision that helped the company grow into a corporate powerhouse that values its employees and the places where it does business. He once said, "A few hours a week is all it takes, and the payoff is the great feeling of personal satisfaction when you've helped someone else. Sharing is good business, whether it's with coworkers or those less fortunate." I believe Bob and Shirley gave a lot more than a few hours a week, though. I also think about people like Dave Mowat, who took the reins of ATB Financial and overhauled ATB's corporate culture and approach to customer service. Over the course of a decade under Dave's leadership, ATB more than doubled its assets, increased its customer base substantially, and developed one of the most admired corporate cultures in the country. ATB is headquartered in Edmonton and has had an incredible impact on our city, not only as a business and job creator, but also as a responsible corporate citizen, supporting causes and organizations that have improved our quality of life. Dave inspired the kind of corporate culture that recognizes good business is about more than just the bottom line. I also think about countless others who have committed themselves to building our community in big and small ways. Neighbors serving on community leagues together, committees to help City Hall make decisions, volunteering to support our friends in Fort McMurray as they escaped the fires and made their way to safety in Edmonton. When we come together as a community to chart our own course and solve our own problems, great things happen. It is why we keep coming back to the 4 key descriptors for Edmonton: open, inventive, creative, and collaborative. And Angela, I've never thought of myself in those categories, and thank you, I'm going to ponder that for some time. It's also important to recognize that collaboration and cooperation is not always an easy thing to do. We have many passionate people with all kinds of ideas on how to achieve big things. Even when the conversations are difficult, however, the outcomes can be remarkable. We need only look at what has happened with the development of Ice District over the last several years to appreciate what we can accomplish together. There have been more than $2.5 billion of private investment in downtown real estate, with thousands of jobs created and revenues that will repay the public investment, likely ahead of schedule. With more hotel rooms and more residential development, Ice District has made an incredibly positive impact on downtown Edmonton. The last 3 decades have been nothing short of transformational in Edmonton. Together, we have built a city that cares for the people that live here, that is ripe with opportunity for established companies and startups alike, that has world-class academic institutions and has the festivals, culture, venues, sports, and hotspots that enrich our lives. I wanted to raise this history and set some context for a few reasons. First, to express my appreciation to every single Edmontonian that has done the heavy lifting to make our city an incredible place for Tamara and I to raise our family. Second, to consider what is required to create a prosperous and resilient economy for the long term. And third, to highlight that Edmonton is once again at a pivotal moment in its story, and that a new generation of builders is ready to step up. Looking at our current circumstances objectively, it is fair to say that we are in a far more positive position than we were 30 years ago. But this does not mean that we're immune to the effects of a troubled economy, geopolitical forces, technological disruption, and active opposition to our efforts to grow and prosper. In Alberta, economic disruptions have been made worse by the unprecedented depth of the collapse in oil prices and the damaging ripple effects that this is having on our resource-based economy. It only serves to further emphasize the necessity of building resilience into our economy. I have great empathy for our fellow citizens who are suffering from the losses of jobs, livelihoods, and homes across sectors because of the collapse of oil prices. Now, recently, Mayor Iveson, while speaking to the media in his year-end interviews, said that 2018 was a tough year, but that we've taken the first steps toward building the Edmonton we want for the next generation. An Edmonton that remains a place of opportunity, that is adaptable and resilient to economic changes, and that is prepared to manage prosperity and growth in a responsible way. Like the mayor, I believe we are refining our priorities and we're putting more thought into what the future will look like, both as a community and as an economy. It is vital that we be forward-thinking, but it's also vital that we respect and value what has brought us to this point. We are the beneficiaries of the hard work and commitment of the many generations who came before us, and like us, our children and grandchildren will be the beneficiaries of our passion for Edmonton and the hard work that we are doing to ensure Edmonton remains a dynamic and prosperous community. EEDC was created in one of Edmonton's pivotal moments. I was privileged to be there. To be standing here as the CEO of EEDC so many years later at another pivotal moment for Edmonton is an amazing and humbling experience. It highlights for me one of my core principles: always do good work, because you never know if you might end up living in a house that you built years ago. When I think about the work that we must do to continue moving Edmonton forward, I apply the same principle. Always do good work because we want to build a great city to pass on to our children and grandchildren. Now, from the challenges of the 1990s, Edmonton has learned and implemented lessons that will help us better withstand future economic shocks. There's now far more to our economy than oil and gas. Edmonton has become a leading research center for artificial intelligence and has a burgeoning technology and innovation sector. We have an internationally recognized tourism brand that is spreading the word about what a phenomenal place Edmonton is to visit, to host conventions, and to produce world-class sporting and cultural events. We have businesses that are growing and exporting products to Europe and Asia, and downtown Edmonton is once again growing and booming. Air service was a big issue in the 1990s, and through the contributions of many, we've seen amazing progress. The Edmonton International Airport has grown into an important economic development partner. Each year it welcomes more and more visitors to the region and increases its capacity to move both people and goods. This ultimately leads to greater opportunity investment in Edmonton, growing our economy. And with the launch of Edmonton Global in 2018, the Edmonton region is collaborating to advance regional priorities in economic development. EDC has worked with Edmonton Global throughout the year, providing support as we could to help them get up and running. I'm looking forward to our new relationship and having that grow in the coming months, working together to grow prosperity in the Edmonton region. I'm also happy to say that Edmonton Economic Development Corporation itself is in a strong position to build on its work as Edmonton's Economic Development Agency. The purpose of EEDC was to bring together in one organization interconnected divisions that are responsible for moving important economic drivers in Edmonton. It cultivates the energy, innovation, and investment needed to build a prosperous and resilient economy. This model is unique and has given us the ability to be adaptive and responsive to changing needs and circumstances. This unified approach, founded on principles of scalability and adaptability, means that our city can move faster on new initiatives, take on bigger risks, and achieve more. As Angela said, in 2018, EDC was tasked with operating the Edmonton Expo Centre on behalf of the City of Edmonton. Moving that facility into our corporation proved to be a massive undertaking, but we were able to do it seamlessly because our organization model is flexible and responsive. Together, EDC and its divisions and venues generate nearly $200 million in economic impact annually. We're implementing changes that will make our organization even more responsive to the community's needs, allow us to make better decisions, and to provide strategic advice to City Council. In recent months, our economic discussions, I believe, have been paralyzed by the pipeline issue. This is a critical issue. For most of us, the most effective thing that we can do is work on the things within our organization's supply chains and networks that we can control. I believe we need to tune out things that we cannot control so that we can spend time working on what we can control. What the Edmonton approach to economic prosperity and resilience, what it must look like moving forward. In November, at our mid-year shareholder meeting, Edmonton City Council approved a provisional expanded mandate for EEDC. This expansion mandate gives us responsibility to provide economic development strategy advice to City Council in addition to our current economic development, tourism, and venue responsibilities. It is our commitment to you that our approach to strategy development will be open and collaborative, and we will reflect the diverse needs and perspectives of our community in the recommendations that we develop. In developing strategy, we need to look at our economic system and how all the parts of the economy work together. My sense is that focusing on prosperity and resilience will identify many opportunities for businesses and organizations to improve and grow and to support others in that journey. I see an overall leveling up of our economy as key to achieving our goals. We need to have a conversation about the key drivers of our economy, the most effective ways to increase outputs that will create prosperity and instill resilience. EEDC is positioned to serve as the convener and facilitator of these conversations, and with many other partners to implement what they produce. Given this expanded mandate, EEDC will be conducting comprehensive public engagement sessions starting right away. Throughout Edmonton's history, we have demonstrated repeatedly that we, the community, are the solution to the challenges that confront us. Waiting for outside help is not what we do. Taking responsibility together to face challenges is the Edmonton way. I believe that everyone in this room and in their own way and with their own expertise is driving to create greater prosperity and resilience for our city. The only way to understand these concepts in a new, more impactful way is to share our unique experience and expertise with each other. To kick off this process, we thought we would use the Impact Luncheon to have the first of many ongoing community conversations. Earlier, I spoke about the legacy of some of our most active city builders. Today's conversation is with some more incredibly talented people who are doing dynamic work in their respective fields, which build our economy and our community. I would like to ask Stacy to come back out and our three panelists to join me on stage. I'd like you to welcome Ashif Mani, venture partner at Rising Tide Venture Capital, Christy Holtby, Vice President, Strategic Partnerships at the University Hospital Foundation, and Tom Reddle, CEO of Chandos Construction. Stacy.
All right, let's do a little get to know. Let's talk to the panelists. What you do, who you are, and why you do it. Ashif.
Hello, I'm Ashif Maji. I'm a serial entrepreneur. Currently, my role is venture partner at a San Francisco area venture firm called Rising Tide. The reason I do that, and the reason I selected that entity to work with, is I've long believed that we need institutional investment opportunities here in Alberta with ties into the Bay Area. It's very important for this region to be tied into the Valley and bring in money from there, bring in partnerships from there, allow our entrepreneurs access to that market. Rising Tide is one of those entities that can help with that, and that's the reason I've picked them to work with.
Christy.
I get to work with an incredibly talented group of people to seek investments into the University of Alberta Hospital, the Mazankowski Alberta Heart Institute, and the K Edmonton Clinic to help improve health outcomes for Albertans. And why would I do that? There is no shortage of passionate individuals and opportunities to learn working with healthcare professionals.
And what I love about my job, and CEO is kind of a generic title, there's a lot of people that are CEOs, but I do focus on three things. One is, I call it connecting the dots. The beautiful thing about a CEO's job is that the purview is anything and everything that can impact the organization. And so connecting those dots, reconciling them, and figuring out what is the right strategy and the way forward for our organization, and then creating an alignment amongst our people to pursue that direction and hopefully take us in a direction that's going to keep us healthy. And the other thing I just spend a lot of time with is professional development. I work with people who are 2 and 3 levels below me in the organization, are high potentials, next generation of leaders, and coach and mentor them in their own professional development, which is a great ROI for my time, I think.
Right, as we were listening to Derek's speech, I picked out a few words that he kind of hit on a couple of times: prosperity and resilience. Let's start with you, Christy. What do those 2 words mean to you, and how do we get there?
How do we get there? Well, resilience, I think, is the grit and determinedness to achieve a goal. And I think actually the not-for-profit sector or the charitable sector has that in spades. It's times that would be considered tough that we're probably at our finest. There is no way that we can walk away from the commitments that we've made to the community and the people that we serve. So perhaps there's an opportunity, and I'm really grateful to Derek for the opportunity to engage in this conversation and to see my colleagues. There's 2 million people working across Canada in this sector. So we're a big part of that too. So how can we help in some innovative solutions?
Ashif, what do those words mean to you?
So to me, prosperity and resilience. So prosperity, I think Alberta's got that ingrained in the sense that we've gone through a lot of turbulent times, but each time we come back stronger. And I think we have the same tenacity, the same ability to do that this time. My challenge to everybody here, and we've heard Jason mention it, and Derek, you mentioned it, is that, as individuals, as leaders, we need to look at ourselves as to how can we change this story? How can we change Alberta to be more diversified? So that's where the resilience comes in. We have that DNA in us. We're very unique. In one of my companies, we were in 180 countries, and I heard that time and time. They always said, you have a very unique talent pool. The people that you have in Alberta are very unique. They have this resilience quality in them. So we have it in us. It's now for us to get that engaged and work together.
Tom?
Resilience, to me, is the foundational piece of organizations and cities and societies. But to be resilient, the people have to be resilient. And we think about resilient organizations sometimes in terms of financial capacity and balance sheets, but really, the culture and the connectedness and how sticky those organizations are and the people are to each other is very fundamental to resilience. But resilience, of course, means that we can withstand shocks and still be okay. However, it doesn't mean that's a static state because the environment changes. So resilience also has an aspect of adaptability to it. So if the environment changes, to be resilient, we need to be able to move with that. And as time goes on, it's more and more. And I think that's more and more the case. Prosperity, on the other hand, is where you're going to, and prosperity requires investment. And resilience and prosperity are connected because if you do not have the resources to invest, whether it's financial or time, effort, and energy, if you don't have that resilient base to invest from, you can't engage in things that will make you more prosperous in the future.
So you just have to turn on the television, you just have to open the newspaper, you have to turn on your radio, and you know that there's challenges in this province. Let's talk a little bit about the challenges, because we're not going to ignore them, because they are there. Let's talk about the challenges, and let's talk about, we all have children, and so we always talk about what they did well. Let's talk about what we've been successful at so far. So the challenges and what we've been successful at so far. Derek, do you want to jump in here?
Sure. So we've talked a lot about challenges that we've had when oil prices go down. And of course, one of the things that we've seen is our organizations get leaner and they can do more with less. And that comes from, I believe, good management and focus and learning how to do things better. And every cycle has helped us get better and better at running lean organizations. And that then creates capacity that in the good times, we need to exploit to its fullest potential so that we can grow when we have the good times.
Christy?
I think we have some incredible established companies and we have some emergent AI and health tech type companies. And I think There's an opportunity for mentorship. We've got these success stories, so how do we take the learnings from established companies and the business acumen that comes with that and blend that and mentor our leaders in AI and healthcare who might not have that business side. So I think there's an incredible opportunity around cross-pollination from what we've done really well in the past and what we're setting forward to do.
You actually talked yesterday, we were speaking, about our humbleness as a community, as the city of Edmonton. Tom, do you think we're just too humble?
I think we are, and I think, and we say that a lot about ourselves, but the difference that I found, and as the economy slowed down here, what we did with our organization is we opened up operations in Ontario and British Columbia. And when you start to see the different, I'll call it corporate cultures of different places, you do recognize more so how humble we are. And it's important that we recognize what we're strong at, and if we're going to be playing in other markets, and if we have to diversify, and it doesn't mean geographically, there's many ways of diversifying, vertically, horizontally, that we need to understand that there's other parts of the world out there, and because we've been so Alberta-centric for so long, we've been so busy here with our business in our own backyard, we need to understand how to play in a larger sandbox. And that humbleness can be an issue. And when we're dealing with other corporate cultures that might be, or business styles, which might be a little bit more aggressive, we may not be taking advantage of everything that we could.
Ashif, I follow your Facebook page and your Instagram feed, and you travel the world. Do you think we should be shouting what Edmonton is and what Edmonton does and what Edmonton can have to offer from every rooftop around the world?
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the things. When we were competing with companies in the U.S., et cetera, who are very loud and verbose and very proud. And if we were to take the typical Canadian approach and be humble, we wouldn't have gotten to where we got. So we had to take the same approach of being proud and really showcase that this was built right here in Edmonton. This is #1 in the world, and it was built in Edmonton. And so, I'd encourage all the entrepreneurs here, all the business leaders here to brag about your entities, because what you have is truly amazing. It truly is world class. You need to let the world know that. They're not going to hear it unless you tell them. So yeah, got to be much more prouder. And I think for the media, it's the same thing. We need to showcase these entrepreneurs, these stories. You need to help them spread their word too.
All right.
I think, it's really unique to be able to say companies like Johnson & Johnson and Merck are putting permanent footprints. These are multinational companies who could go anywhere in the world, and they're choosing Edmonton. We have these international centers, and the advice we get from these companies when they come to town and Edmonton comes together to host them and put our best foot forward is that we should be standing on chairs and shouting from the rooftops of what we've got here. And if they're giving us that advice, I think we should heed that advice.
All right, so many city builders. You can look in the audience, and there's a lot of them out there, you guys on stage. What kind of conversations should we be having that perhaps we weren't having a number of years ago? Tom?
I think when Alberta was very, very busy and we were so focused on just delivering the goods in our own backyard, our conversation was with us, about us, and what do we need to do in our own market. And so that's almost like building the city from the inside out. But now the fundamentals have changed, and we have to understand where do we fit within, like I said, a larger sandbox or larger market parameters. And to do that, sometimes we have to go outside and look in. And again, see, if we're going to understand our competitive advantage, we have to get outside of our own bubble to understand what it is we have to compete with, what are our core competencies, and how can we play in other markets, other places, or in other ways, or in our own market. But we have to get outside and create the lens of looking in and see how we compare.
What conversation do you think is lacking that we should be having that we're not, Derek?
So I think Edmonton really comes together when someone else has a problem, and we jump on that. Fort McMurray is burning down. Our community rallies like crazy. We have a fallen police constable. We get behind the police service like no one in the world could do. What we're maybe not good at is putting our hands up and saying, I need help for my own organization. And I think that's part of this conversation.
Right. Ashif?
I think it's got to be, we got to change the conversation around in terms of, you've heard the saying, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. And I'd suggest you change it to saying, if it ain't broken, break it. Because we're in an age of innovation and disruption. So if you're not breaking what you currently have, your competitors are. And do you want them to get there before you? Probably not. So whatever's working, break it, because there's a better way of doing it. And that's where things like AI, which we're number 3 in the world in terms of research, can come into play. So AI can go into every industry, into every business. It's not just for the tech space, it's for every industry. So figure out how can you break your business, because you can make it better. So if it ain't broken, break it.
It seems external factors are already breaking the oil and gas industry right now, especially here in Alberta. It seems like Edmonton is sort of at an intersection of a couple of economies. So we've got the oil and gas that led us to where we are today and the prosperity that we have. Innovation, which you were just speaking about, Ashif, poised to explode. How do we leverage both of them? Are they that similar? Are they that different? How do we go about that? Tom?
I would say leverage both of them and more. And to Ashif's point is we need to be constantly reinventing and investing and testing. And we talk about, for example, the AI sector and how wonderful it's doing. Well, that started with somebody with an idea who acted on an idea, and then somebody else, and then all of a sudden you get this little bit of critical mass and you have this thing. What about the hundreds of thousands of ideas that didn't work out? And we need to keep, so that, Ashif, from the IT sector, like how many things do you have to do that don't work before you find the one that actually where you get the hit and it clicks. So I think we need to be continually doing that, building on what we have, but looking for more and looking for new.
It doesn't have to be either or.
No.
Right, Ashif?
No, it doesn't. It's got to be both in conjunction, right? So if you look at the industries we have here, we have some great leaders that have amazing practices, amazing solutions. We have a great testing ground. If I look at AHS, Alberta Health Services, we have an amazing set of very rich data. That data has to be made available. So again, it's not a question of, well, here's the reasons why we can't do it. I think the question should always be, tell me how we are going to do it, right? The why not should not come into the equation. It's about how can we make it happen? How can we share that data? How can we instill, or how can we rather make that data available to the entities here, the entrepreneurs here, that can leverage that data and create the best healthcare solutions? Healthcare is something that is obviously global in its need. So we have an amazing data-rich province. Let's use it. That's innovation and disruption coming together.
Right, Derek?
What we need to do is, well, Ashif stole part of my answer, so that's definitely, we need to learn how to apply technologies like artificial intelligence into all of the industries that we have. But I was going to go with the idea of a resilient family or individual. And a resilient person, let's say a breadwinner in a family, looking at their industry says, job prospects may not be that good in this industry. What transferable skills do I have that I can apply to a different job that's completely different? And people with that kind of perspective can adapt in any economy. And I think our skilled workers, our capital, and our organizations can look for these opportunities and then say, what skills have we learned so far? And let's transfer those skills into other areas.
All right, we talk about innovation. And I know, Christy, this goes for businesses, it goes for nonprofits for sure. Does innovation just apply to startups? Or can established companies, established organizations, can they innovate? And I think, Ashif, I already know what you're going to say because you're breaking things over there. Talk about that, Tom.
Established organizations have to innovate, because if you do not innovate and your market peers are innovating, net, you're falling behind. So we have to play the long game, and innovation is incremental. It's a buzzword and we talk about it a lot, but really what is the practical application of innovation in particularly small, medium enterprises, established organizations which make up the bulk of our economy? And it's testing. And you have to have the conditions, so culture is really important, because if people are afraid or people are operating from fear or from a scarcity mentality, they will not be able to innovate, because it is a creative exercise. So we have to have the cultures and the safe environments for people to test and try things and develop a healthy relationship with failure. because failure is an integral part of the innovation. And every time you try something, whether it works or it doesn't work, you learn something. And you have to have that continuous improvement mindset. And I think it's really, really critical in organizations to click into that, because if we don't, we will net fall behind, because the world keeps moving at a faster and faster pace.
And Christy, you got lots of competition out there.
Totally. But I think we're also at our best when we collaborate. So I think there's these opportunities when you think about organizations like Big Brothers Big Sisters and Boys and Girls Clubs merging together to respond to a community need or an opportunity. We have chosen to break traditional molds of philanthropy. Ashif used to also be one of our board members, so possibly that helps in breaking the system, but rethinking how a philanthropic organization can partner with the government and partner with a big company and sort of say, if we take our hats off and sit around the table and say, what's the opportunity, and come with a very honest and trusting environment where you're okay to fail, but explore tackling a big idea with a different breadth of experience. So changing the model about how we think things through will allow us to innovate.
It's scary though, Ashif. Like, you've been doing things the same way all these years, and it seems to be working okay. When you say break it, that terrifies me a bit.
It is, but it's a question of, are you okay with change, right?
And are you okay with failure too?
Exactly, and that's a key thing. If you're looking to instill that culture of innovation and creativity in an organization, then I think the first thing you need to do is establish failure is actually a success. Failure is celebrated. Okay, you reward people for failure, and it sounds dumb, but when you do that, you set the tone that it's okay to fail. When we were trying to do things, 9 out of the 10 things we did were miserable failures. Several millions of dollars of R&D down the drain. But that one thing that worked made it all worthwhile, and we wouldn't have got there unless the 9 things failed. So, to all of you, there is Singularity University is coming to Edmonton, April 23rd, 24th. Cheryl is here from EEDC, I think table 33 or somewhere around there. I saw you earlier. That is an amazing 2-day workshop that I'd encourage all of you to attend. If you want to think about how can you instill that innovation and disruption in your business, go to those 2 days and you'll be blown away.
Typically, when we talk about economic development, and you touched on this, Christy, perhaps there aren't seats at the table for nonprofit organizations, for charities. How important is it that you have a seat at the table as Edmonton prospers and becomes more resilient in the times that we face right now?
So there's a few things that come from that. I mean, Edmonton is home to the second largest chapter of the Association of Fundraising Professionals. So we are a sector that contributes 8.1% of the GDP nationally. So there's that part on the economic side of things, but we're also that social safety network of our communities. We are it's the arts and culture organizations that build that sense of community. It's what helps attract and retain top talent to our community. We don't want people leaving because, as you were saying over lunch, the arts and culture scene, the opera isn't performing. Like, we need things like the Edmonton Opera. We need institutions like CKUA here. We need those organizations that make life rich and full to be part of that discussion, because we are that value add that make people come and that make the quality of life for people to stay.
And Derek, you feel it's important that these organizations are at the table?
Well, absolutely, and as you can see from the conversation today, Christy's comments aren't simply focused on her organization and what it needs. It's about the community. And I see this amazing opportunity to get the system right, because we're looking at all the parts of it. And that's why we have everyone here today, and that's why we're doing it this way, is because I believe this can be a unique differentiator for Edmonton, the way we work together. Not so much the industries that we have, but the way we do it. And I don't think that another city could start from behind and replicate that.
I just want to add to that, in that when I was talking about that resilient base, resilience is those connections. What holds it all together? And in a community, you wouldn't have the resilience you would have if you didn't have the arts and culture piece and integrated. And the other one with the not-for-profit sector and the economy, they are merging. And the connectedness and overlapping a lot of times in terms of not-for-profits and for-profit sector are becoming more and more integral. And it's continuing to do that more and more.
Ashif?
No, I'll say the same things. I don't want to repeat it.
Okay. Let's talk about collaboration then. We have to work together, and that you just all reiterated that. Give me some examples that you've seen in your life, in your business, in your inner workings that worked, that you can share with all of us, that we can maybe take a lesson from. Chief, you want to start?
Sure, I'll give you a quick example. So I belong to a group called the Henry Crown Fellowship, which is part of the Aspen Global Leadership. And every year they put together 20 to 21 people from around the world into a cohort. And when I was accepted into this organization, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to find people with similar interests, etc., and going to collaborate with them. When I walked into that room, everybody was different. There were people from the arts, people from healthcare, people from the university, entrepreneurs, etc. And I thought at first, well, how's this going to work? Like, how are we all going to see eye to eye, etc.? And the whole point was we weren't supposed to see eye to eye. We were given some of the most complex problems to solve. But because we had that diversity of thinking, it was amazing. The solution we came up with was something that I would never have come up with on my own or with a team of my peers. So the lesson learned is surround yourself with very diverse people. People that don't have anything to do with your industry will give you some of the best ideas on how to change your business around.
Love that. Derek?
I was just thinking of our grand prize here. The work that was done to get the flight back to San Francisco was an effort of local government, business. Our organization involved our Innovate group, our enterprise group, and tourism to make the case for that critical link to Silicon Valley. And so that was just an example that we were able to enjoy right in this community, and someone's going to be able to fly there soon. David, I guess.
Yeah, Mr. Bridges. David. Christy, where have you seen collaboration work? And perhaps not work?
More often than not, I'd say I'd see collaboration at work. I think having the environment in which I work, you alluded to earlier, the people who step up to board positions outside of their organization. So they're taking their skill and expertise from one sector and applying it to another organization. And I think it allows for that collaboration around a board table and in some of the organizations within our community, and taking that expertise from one industry to another and rethinking. I mean, you put a lot of entrepreneurs in a room talking about healthcare system improvements, and it gets super feisty around why can't we do it faster and why can't we do it these things. So those kind of tough conversations and honest conversations are the ones that we need to be having, and we get to see the outcomes.
We've done a lot of work on collaborative design and construction methodologies, and design and construction is traditionally a fairly adversarial industry. And we wanted to find a better way, and we did a lot of research, and we tried a lot of experiments on it, some which have worked and some which have not. And we found that some of the key elements for getting value out of high-performance collaboration models would be things like values alignment. Make sure that if you're collaborating towards a common goal. Another one, like Ashif mentioned, diversity is critical. But diversity, we all talk about it, but it's hard because we like people who think like us because it's reinforcing. So to get in a room with people who don't think like us, we actually have to have the tools, which are behavior-based, in order to get the value of diversity. And you have to have these safe environments where if somebody has a contrary opinion, they feel safe enough that they're going to speak up. Because
you have to be able to be uncomfortable.
Exactly, yeah. and you have to get used to that. And then, so we've done this in a number of occasions, and the other thing that we bring into it is when you're collaborating, you're operating from an abundance mentality. Let's create some value together so we both can do well. As opposed to what happens when companies are under stress, a lot of times you get in these, and I see this in a lot of conversations I have with business people, is you get into the scarcity mentality, and it's fighting, fighting for a dollar, fighting for a nickel. Your loss is my gain. And that's just not a healthy place to be, and it's not a very creative place to be.
All right, we said when we started this panel that we don't tout ourselves enough. So, Derek, I'm going to start with you, so the other panelists can think of an answer. Talk about some of the success stories that you've seen that perhaps Edmontonians don't know about or don't hear enough about.
I'm just going to pick one.
Okay.
I was involved with just a few weeks ago. There's a company called IM Biotechnologies. They've been in our Advanced Technology Center for I think, 10 years. Just a very small operation. And the reason that I'm interested in it, as I said at their product release conference, is that I'm a male, I'm over 50, and have a family history of prostate problems. And they have this incredible non-invasive therapy using microbeads that can shrink tumors, including enlarged prostates and all kinds of other things that most of us will run into if we live long enough. And just a little Edmonton company, very, very quiet, and working for years, and now they've got something that they have regulatory approval to use. It's a fantastic story.
All right, Chief, yell it out.
Artificial intelligence. So when I talk to the average Edmontonian and I ask them, where do you think we rank, Edmonton, Alberta, rank in AI, I'll get, top 50, top 100, top 200, etc. When I tell them we're number 3, they're shocked and they don't believe it, etc. So that's one of our best kept secrets, and it should not be a secret. It should be something that we should be bragging about. Now we need to turn that research into commercialization. So that's a whole different challenge because we've kind of grown up with that, thinking of research is great, which it is. Commercialization is better. So we need to get to that step too, which there's a bunch of us here working to help with that.
Christy?
Edmonton is home to Canada's first stroke ambulance and the first one in the world that serves a rural population. So an Edmonton-based team is going out into the community and meeting you to increase the time to treatment. Or decrease, sorry, not increase, decrease the time to treatment for patients suffering from stroke. So we're keeping people healthier and being more responsive to the needs of our particular community and our landscape.
I'm going to shamelessly use our own company as an example because it relates to some of the points I made about understanding and changing our perspective on who we are and what we're about in Edmonton. When things slowed down, we didn't say how are we going to hunker down and wait for oil prices to go up. We said how are we going to grow, because we want to grow and we're not going to sit around and wait for years until the energy comes back. And so to do that, we had to expand to other markets that have different economic cycles, namely British Columbia and Ontario. And the interesting thing is when we did that and we started to think nationally and where does Edmonton fit in all that, our business base in Edmonton grew by 30%. And it grew by 30%. So this is, we're employee owned, but so our center of gravity is still Edmonton. So that is growth. So we're doing business in other provinces that has generated growth in Edmonton. And it's generated employment in Edmonton because we need to service the operations and the growth of the expansion. So these things are not mutually exclusive. And looking at different ways of approaching the market and keeping the mindset that we need to grow and we need to find a way is different than saying how are we going to hunker down and cut and slash. Look for opportunity. That's the entrepreneurial spirit. And established companies can do that, and I think should be doing that.
All right, last question, because I know that you guys got to get back to work. Derek, I'm going to start with you. How do we ensure that these ideas that we just had, and some fantastic ones out there, and I know that there's a lot of ideas in the heads of the people who are in this room, how do we make sure when we leave these rooms, leaves this beautiful space, that they're acted upon, that they're not just words that we set up on a stage here at the convention center?
I'll talk about it a bit more in a minute, but one of my personal goals for this event today was that when people walked out of this room, the first thought was, we got to get on this, let's get the team together this afternoon. So that's what I'd invite everyone to do, is to say, from what we heard today, what are we going to do about it? And a little bit more later.
So Tom and I belong to a group called YPO, Young Presidents Organization. And we have a concept within that called Forum, which is a group of 8 to 10 members that kind of hold you accountable. So what I'd suggest to you is make a list of what you are going to do based on today's discussions, and pick somebody else not in your company to hold you accountable to that. So that way you will get it done. When I go to conferences, I do something very similar because I learn a ton, and then I found that if I didn't actually make a conscious effort to do something about it, I would have learned a ton and not have done anything with it.
I would suggest that if everyone in this room walked out of here and said to someone else who's doing something interesting or something you want to learn more about, ask them, how can I help? And see how that conversation goes, because maybe that's our introduction to getting to that a little bit uncomfortable conversation about collaboration, is to just walk out of here and say, how can I help? Easier question than I need help.
Good for you.
My suggestion is to try something. I expect every person in this room has an idea they thought of trying, but they don't have it all figured out. If it's 60 or 70% figured out, just try it, because by trying it, you'll start to create that innovative process and exercise that innovative muscle. And that's part of the learning journey. And if we wait and try and have everything figured out before we actually take an action, then a lot of times it never happens. So just try stuff.
All right, try stuff, break stuff. Oh, geez.
Exactly.
I'm glad my 10-year-old's not here. All right, thank you so much. I'm going to be breaking and trying stuff and walking up on the rafters. Thank you so much for joining us. And Derek, you have the final word.